The desert stretched endlessly under the burning sun, its golden dunes rising and falling like waves of a silent ocean. Few dared to travel deep into this sea of sand, but Amir walked with purpose. He was not alone. Behind him followed his small team of explorers Nabi, Rashid, Lena, and Farid. Each step sank into the hot sand, but their eyes were fixed on the horizon where something unusual rose above the dunes. Amir was a man who believed history held secrets that could guide the future. For years, he had studied maps, old scrolls, and forgotten notes left by travelers. Many called him a dreamer, but he never gave up. That morning, when the first light of dawn touched the desert, Amir felt certain his search was about to end. As the team climbed a tall dune, the sight below made them stop in awe. A shape of stone broke through the sand. It was not a natural rock, but the top of a buried structure. The edges were sharp, and strange carvings still marked the weathered surface. The desert winds had uncovered part of a doorway sealed long ago. Lena shaded her eyes with her hand. "It looks like a tomb," she whispered. Rashid shook his head nervously. "Or it could be cursed. The locals always say the sands hide places that should never be touched." Amir stood silently for a moment. He had heard the same stories many times about tombs that carried plagues, chambers that drove men to madness, and kings who punished from beyond the grave. Yet his heart told him this was no ordinary resting place. He had studied symbols similar to these before. They hinted at a dynasty long erased from memory, a chapter of history never spoken of in temples or scrolls. They moved closer, their footsteps crunching against the thin crust of sand that covered the stones. The entrance was half buried, with massive blocks arranged in a way that suggested deliberate sealing. The carvings around it were faint but still visible. They showed figures bowing before a tall man who wore a crown, unlike any known pharaoh. Nabi touched the stone carefully. "These are very old, older than the pyramids we know." Farid, who carried their tools, placed the heavy bag on the ground. "So we open it?" Amir's eyes narrowed as he studied the carvings. Something in the lines and shapes felt different, almost like a warning. But the thirst for knowledge was stronger than fear. "Yes," he said at last. "We uncover what history tried to hide." The team worked for hours under the scorching sun. They cleared sand, dug around the blocks, and brushed away the dust of centuries. Sweat soaked their clothes, and the heat pressed down on them. But determination kept their hands moving. At last, as the sun began to sink, the entrance revealed itself fully. A massive stone doorway stood before them, sealed with slabs that bore cracks from time but still held strong. Lena traced a line of faded hieroglyphs carved above the door. Her voice trembled slightly as she read aloud, "To all who enter, beware. This place holds not treasure, but truth. We've sealed what was sealed. For it guards the world from darkness." The words sent a shiver through the group. Rashid stepped back. "I told you, it is cursed. We should leave this place before night falls." But Amir's eyes glowed with determination. "Do you not see? This is not a curse. This is history speaking to us, the truth of an age forgotten. If the past warned us, then it means something important lies within, something too great to be destroyed. So they sealed it away." Farid shook his head. "Or something too dangerous." Silence hung in the air. The desert wind whistled between the stones, almost like a voice carried from another time. Amir broke the silence. "We came here to uncover what others feared. This is our chance to step where no one has stepped for thousands of years. Our names will be remembered as the ones who brought light to what was hidden." The team exchanged uneasy glances. Doubt and curiosity wrestled inside their minds. Finally, Lena nodded. "If we stop now, we may never return. Let us see what waits behind these stones." The decision was made. They set up camp near the entrance, their torches casting flickering light against the ancient carvings. The night grew cold, and the desert sky filled with stars, but no one slept easily. The warnings on the doorway weighed on their thoughts. Amir sat awake, staring at the sealed entrance. He thought about the pharaohs whose names filled history books, men who built monuments that still touched the sky. Yet here was a name, a story, erased so completely that only whispers remained. Why had the people of that time gone to such lengths to bury this memory? What truth was so dangerous it had to be locked away? As the desert wind carried grains of sand across the stones, Amir made a silent promise. Tomorrow, they would break the seal. Tomorrow, they would walk into the darkness of the tomb, and whatever truth lay hidden, they would bring it back into the light. The morning sun rose gently over the dunes, painting the desert in shades of gold. Amir and his team stood before the great doorway, their faces marked by a mixture of awe and unease. The night had been restless. Every whisper of the desert wind had sounded like voices, and every flicker of torchlight had seemed like shadows moving across the stone carvings. Yet, as the new day began, determination returned to their hearts. Amir placed his hand on the stone surface. The blocks were heavy, older than anything he had ever touched. They carried the weight of forgotten centuries. He looked at his companions and spoke firmly. Today, we uncover what history has hidden. Fard grunted as he lifted his tools. Then let us begin before the sun makes the work impossible. The team set to work, hammering and prying at the cracks in the stone. Dust rose into the air, mixing with sweat as the explorers gave all their strength. Each strike echoed through the desert like the heartbeat of something awakening. Hours passed, and at last, the first slab loosened. Together, they pulled it free, revealing a narrow gap into the darkness within. A wave of cool air rushed out, carrying with it the smell of earth long undisturbed. Lena shivered as she peered into the shadows. "It feels alive in there," she whispered. Amir lit a torch and held it up. The light reached only a short distance, but it revealed walls, covered in carvings. The hieroglyphs were unlike the common texts found in other tombs. They were sharper, almost desperate in the way they were written, as if the carvers had rushed to leave a message before time ran out. The team widened the gap and entered carefully. Their footsteps echoed on the stone floor. Inside, the chamber was larger than expected, its high ceiling supported by thick columns that were carved with warnings. The flicker of torches brought the figures on the walls to life. They showed a tall pharaoh standing before a great fire, his arms raised as if commanding forces unseen round him. His people bowed in fear. Nabi squinted at the inscriptions. "These hieroglyphs are strange. They speak not of glory or riches, but of danger. They tell of a king who sought power that did not belong to man." Lena leaned closer, brushing dust away with her hand. Her voice trembled as she read. "He turned to those who came from the stars. He promised them worship, and they gave him strength beyond the reach of death. But the people rose together, and they sealed him where even time would forget." The explorers stood in silence. The chamber felt colder as the words sank in. Rashid rubbed his arms as though the air itself pressed against him. "This is no tomb," he muttered. "This is a prison." Fard frowned. If they feared him so much, why not destroy him? Why build this place at all? Amir studied the chains carved into the wall, shown binding the pharaoh inside a great coffin. Because some powers cannot be destroyed, they can only be locked away. That is why they sealed him, not to protect treasure, but to protect the world. The group moved deeper into the chamber. Their torches revealed more warnings, figures of men and women uniting with spears raised high, driving the pharaoh into darkness. Above them, strange shapes hovered in the sky, shapes that did not resemble birds or clouds. They looked like great vessels, unlike anything known in ancient times. Lena's eyes widened. "Do you see this? The people carved what they saw. They fought not just their pharaoh, but something greater." Rashid stepped back. His voice grew sharp. "Enough. We should leave. This place was not meant for us. We have already seen more than we should." But Amir shook his head firmly. "If they went to such lengths to bury this truth, then it is our duty to bring it into light. History must be told, even when it is dark." They reached the far wall of the chamber, where a massive stone door stood. Unlike the entrance, this one was marked not only with carvings, but with heavy metal clasps that seemed almost too advanced for the time they came from. Strange symbols were etched into the metal, still shining faintly despite the ages. Fard touched one of the clasps, then quickly pulled his hand away. "This is not Egyptian work. It feels different, as if forged by something we do not understand. Amir's eyes lit with curiosity. It matches the story on the walls. The Pharaoh's chains were not of this world. They were gifts from those beyond. Now used to hold him back, Lena placed her torch near the inscriptions above the sealed door and read slowly, "Enter not this place. Break not the seal, for within lies the king who sought to be eternal, and with him lies the shadow that must never rise." Her voice trembled at the last words. The silence after was heavy, pressing down on them all. Rashid broke it with a sharp tone. "We leave now. This is not for us. If we break these seals, we bring ruin upon ourselves." But Amir stood before the sealed doorway, his torchlight casting his shadow across the ancient stones. His heart pounded with both fear and wonder. "Rashid, do you not see? This is more than a story. This is proof that humanity once faced something unimaginable, and they triumphed. They left behind a warning, yes, but also a record of their courage. If they could rise against such darkness, then so can we." The group exchanged uneasy glances. The warnings were clear, yet the thirst for knowledge burned brighter than fear. Slowly, Amir placed his hand upon the sealed door. The cold of the metal seeped into his skin, and he felt as if the tomb itself was watching him. "We came here to find truth," he said quietly, "and truth waits beyond this door." The heavy silence of the sealed chamber weighed on Amir and his team. As they stood before the strange metal clasps, their torches flickered against the ancient walls, and the shadows of the carvings seemed to move as if watching their every step. Each explorer felt the same mix of fear and curiosity, yet none spoke for a long moment. Finally, Farah cleared his throat. "If this door is sealed with metal that does not belong to this land, then perhaps we should not break it. What if the people of old were right? What if danger waits inside?" Amir turned his torch toward him, his face lit with determination. "If danger is inside, then humanity once faced it and overcame it. They left this record behind for a reason. To remind us, to warn us, but also to prove we are capable of standing against it." Rashid shook his head. "And if it is not only a warning, what if it is a cage? What if breaking this door frees what should never be freed?" The debate fell heavy on the group, but Amir pressed forward. He placed both hands against the cool surface of the sealed door. The metal hummed faintly under his touch, as though it still held a memory of the power that bound it. He felt the weight of centuries pressing back at him, but he did not step away. "We have come too far to turn back," Amir said firmly. "History demands we see what lies within." With great effort, the team worked together to unfasten the clasps. Each strike of their tools echoed sharply through the chamber, sending a ringing sound that made the air seem heavier. Lena held her torch close, her eyes wide with unease. "It feels like the walls are listening," she whispered. When the last clasp fell loose, the stone door groaned and slowly shifted open. A rush of air swept past them, colder than the desert night. Their torches flickered wildly, and the chamber beyond revealed itself. Inside was a vast hall, far larger than the first chamber. The ceiling rose high, supported by towering columns decorated with golden figures. The floor was lined with treasures-ornate statues, shining vessels, and relics untouched by time. Gold and jewels reflected the torchlight, filling the chamber with a dazzling glow. Nabi gasped, "It is a king's hall, riches beyond measure." Fard's eyes widened. "If we take even one of these treasures, our names will live forever." But Amir did not look at the treasures. His eyes were fixed on the center of the chamber, where something far more striking stood. A massive stone sarcophagus rested on a raised platform, unlike the relics around it. The sarcophagus was bound by thick chains of the same strange metal that had sealed the doorway. Symbols covered the surface, etched deep into the stone as though they were carved to last for eternity. Lena stepped closer, her voice trembling. "This is no ordinary coffin. It is a prison for what lies inside." The explorers circled the sarcophagus slowly. The carvings on the surrounding walls told a story in pictures. They showed the same Pharaoh seen earlier, towering above his people, his eyes burning with unnatural power. Round him, shadows rose like living creatures. Then came the carvings of people standing together, carrying torches and weapons, fighting against the Pharaoh, at last. The figures bound him with the same chains that now lay across the sarcophagus. Rashid's face grew pale. This is proof. They were not burying a man. They were trapping a monster. Nabi shook his head. Monster or man? It is still a pharaoh. Imagine the secrets locked in here. Imagine the knowledge he carried. Perhaps even the key to eternal life. Amir studied the chains. His heart pounded, for he could feel the importance of the moment. Look closely. These chains are not broken. After all this time, they still hold. Whatever lies inside is not escaped. Fard tightened his grip on his torch. Then why break them? Why risk it? Amir's voice was steady. Because the world has forgotten this chapter of history. It was buried so deeply that no scroll speaks of it. If we leave it sealed, the truth remains hidden. Humanity must remember what happened here. The team fell into silence again. The glitter of gold surrounded them, but no one reached for it. All eyes were fixed on the chained sarcophagus. The air felt colder, as though the chamber itself breathed leanness. Voice broke the silence. If we open it, there may be no going back. Amir looked at her, then at the others. Every great discovery carries risk. We are not here for treasure. We are here for truth. If this pharaoh made a pact with powers beyond our world, then humanity must know. If our ancestors defeated him once, their courage must be remembered. This is not only about the past, it is about us. The torches crackled in the stillness. Fard exhaled slowly and nodded. Then let us do it together. Rashid groaned but did not walk away. Even his fear could not pull him from the moment. Nabi, too, placed his hand on the chains as if preparing himself. Lena looked at the sarcophagus. Her heart filled with dread, but she stepped closer. Amir raised his torch high, the light glowing across the bound coffin. We will face what they sealed, as they once did, not for riches, but for the truth of our kind. The team gathered their tools. The forgotten chamber seemed to hold its breath. The golden treasures sparkled around them, but none looked at the wealth. Their eyes remained fixed on the ancient sarcophagus, chained and silent, as their first strike against the bindings echoed through the chamber. The shadows on the walls trembled as though they too were alive. The first strike against the chains rang out like thunder in the silent chamber. The sound echoed through the high columns, rolling back at the explorers like a warning from the stones themselves. Amir and his team froze for a moment, the vibration humming in the air. But then they pressed forward. Piece by piece, the ancient bindings gave way under their tools. The sarcophagus stood at the center of the chamber, heavy and immovable. Yet it seemed to breathe with each crack of the metal. The strange chains glowed faintly when struck, as though they resisted not just with strength, but with some unseen energy. Lena's hands shook as she held her torch close. These chains are not meant to be broken. They feel alive. Amir's eyes never left the sarcophagus. His voice was steady but low. Alive or not, we have started. We cannot stop now. Fard struck the chains again, his brow soaked with sweat. Then let us finish quickly, before fear takes over. One by one, the final clasps fell away. The last chain hit the floor with a heavy clang that echoed long after the sound should have faded. The air grew colder, and the flickering torches dimmed as though the chamber had drawn in a deep breath. The explorers stood back as Amir placed both hands on the stone lid. "Help me," he said. Nabi and Fard stepped forward, their muscles straining as they pushed against the heavy cover. With a grinding groan, the sarcophagus began to shift. Dust poured from its edges. Rising like smoke, the sound grew louder, until the lid slid aside, revealing the figure within, wrapped in layers of linen. The body of the pharaoh rested in the center. Unlike other mummies they had seen in museums or books, this one seemed untouched by time. The wrappings were whole, the form beneath strong and full, not withered. His presence filled the chamber. Even in silence, Rashid stumbled back. He does not look dead. He looks as though he sleeps. Lena clutched her torch tighter. Her voice was barely a whisper. Why does he not decay? How does he remain like this? Amir stared, unable to move. He felt both wonder and dread. The pharaoh's face faintly visible beneath thin linen, seemed calm, yet powerful. His brow bore the mark of a crown, and his closed eyes carried an aura that made it hard to breathe. Then the torches flickered violently. A cold rush swept across the chamber, and a low sound, like a sigh after ages of silence, filled the air. The walls trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the golden statues lining the room seemed to watch with new life in their eyes. Lena gasped. "The tomb is waking." Amir felt his chest tighten, but he did not turn away. "No, it is him." The wrappings shifted. Not much, but enough for everyone to see. The pharaoh's chest moved as though he drew a breath. The sound grew louder, a deep, slow rhythm that filled the hall. Rashid shouted, "We must leave now. Seal it again before it is too late." But their feet refused to move. Something held them there. Not with chains, but with presence. The air grew thick, pressing against their skin. Their minds filled with whispers, not spoken aloud but heard. Inside, like thoughts that were not their own, voices promised knowledge. Voices promised strength. Voices promised life that would never end. Pharaoh dropped his torch and clutched his head. "I hear him. He speaks inside my mind." Nabil's eyes widened as he staggered. "He offers power. He says we could rule as kings." Amir forced his focus away from the whispers, his gaze fixed on the walls. The carving showed the same scene, the pharaoh rising, the people bowing, the chains binding him again. He remembered the words, "This was not treasure, but truth." This was not a king, but something darker. He turned to his companions, his voice sharp. "Do not listen. These are lies. He seeks to control us as he controlled them before." Lena's face paled, but she nodded. She pressed her hands against her ears as if trying to block the sound. Rashid did the same, shaking his head in anger. The pharaoh's body shifted again, the wrappings moving like skin under breath. The air shook with a deep vibration, and from the cracks of the stone platform rose thin lines of dark smoke. They spread across the floor like rivers of shadow. Amir stepped forward, holding his torch high. His hand trembled, but he stood firm. "You were defeated once, Pharaoh. You will not rise again." The whispers grew louder, more tempting, more demanding, but Amir's voice cut through them. His strength did not come from riches or promises. It came from the knowledge that humanity had faced this before and triumphed. The chamber roared. With unseen energy, shaking the ground, the explorers huddled together, their torches burning like fragile lights in the storm of darkness rising around them. Lena spoke through clenched teeth, her voice shaking but steady. "If our ancestors sealed him, then we can do the same." Amir looked at her, then at the others. Their faces were filled with fear, yet none turned to flee. They were united, not by greed, but by survival and duty. The pharaoh's chest rose once more, stronger this time, and the sarcophagus trembled. Shadows coiled round the chamber like living snakes. But Amir raised his torch higher, his voice ringing out, "We are not your servants. We are human, and we will not bow." The torches flared, their flames fighting against the shadows. For a moment, light and darkness battled across the walls. The pharaoh's body stilled, though the whispers continued, echoing in their minds. The awakening had begun, and the battle for the tomb had only just started. The chamber trembled with a slow rhythm, as though the very stones remembered the power once held within them. The explorers stood close together, their torches burning weakly against the creeping shadows that spread across the floor. Amir's heart pounded, but his mind sharpened with each passing moment. He knew this was more than the awakening of a king. This was the return of a story buried to protect the world. The linen covering the pharaoh's body twitched again, and a faint sound filled the chamber, not with words but with images that pressed into their minds. Suddenly, Amir was no longer standing in the tomb, but standing inside a vision. The torches, the chains, and even the sarcophagus faded, replaced by a vast desert thousands of years earlier. He saw the pharaoh alive, a towering figure robed in gold and crowned with fire. His people knelt in fear, their faces pale, their bodies trembling. Above them, the sky tore open with lights not of stars. Enormous shapes descended, neither bird nor cloud, but vessels of strange design. They glowed faintly and hummed with power. From these vessels came figures not human, their forms tall and shadowed, their movements slow but commanding. The Pharaoh raised his arms toward them. His voice thundered across the desert. He begged for strength beyond life, power beyond men. In return, he promised his people as servants, their worship as tribute. The beings accepted. A dark flame entered his chest, and his eyes burned with unnatural light. The people bowed lower, not in respect but in fear. Amir gasped and staggered back, clutching his head. The vision ended as quickly as it began, round him. His companions were shaken, each breathing heavily, as if they had been dragged through the memory. Lena spoke first, her voice trembling. "I saw it. He made a pact. He gave away his people for power." Nabil's hands shook. They were not gods. They were something else, something from beyond the sky, and he welcomed them. Rashid's face darkened. That is why they erased his name. That is why they sealed him. He was not a pharaoh. He was a betrayer. The chamber's walls glowed faintly as more carvings revealed themselves. Illuminated by some unseen energy, they told the story of the uprising. The people, once bowed in fear, rose together. Farmers, builders, soldiers, and priests all carried torches and weapons. They stood not as subjects, but as humans united. The carvings showed the battle, shadows spreading across the land, devouring light, and people standing against it with courage. Fard pointed to the wall. "Look, they fought him. They faced his dark power and the ones he served, and they won." Amir felt strength return to him as he watched the carvings. Yes, they won because they were united. They had no chains, no false promises, only their courage. They sealed him away to protect the future, to give us a chance to live free. The Pharaoh's body stirred again, his chest rising, the linen shifting as though his eyes might open at any moment. The whispers returned, pressing harder into their minds. He offered gold, kingdoms, life without end. He promised to make them rulers over nations. Rashid fell to his knees, clutching his head. "It is too strong. He tempts me." Amir rushed to his side, gripping his shoulder. "Do not listen. Remember the people. They were farmers and builders, yet they stood against him. If they resisted, so can we." Lena raised her torch higher, her voice filled with sudden resolve. "The truth is clear now. This is not just a tomb. This is a reminder. Our ancestors wanted us to remember that humans are not weak, even when faced with gods or monsters. They stood and fought." The chamber shook violently, dust raining from the ceiling. The Pharaoh's body arched, and for a heartbeat, his eyes flashed beneath the wrappings golden and burning with dark light. A wave of pressure surged through the chamber, knocking the explorers to the ground. The whispers became a roar, demanding obedience. Amir forced himself up, his legs shaking. "You cannot command us. You cannot chain us. We are human, and we will never bow." The golden statues round the chamber toppled, crashing to the floor. The air grew heavy, but the explorers huddled together. Their torches flared, brighter than before, as though their unity gave fire more strength. The shadows recoiled, hissing like smoke meeting flame. Nabi clenched his fists. "He grows weaker when we resist. Do you see? He feeds on fear, but he cannot break courage." Fard picked up a fallen chain and held it like a weapon. "Then we must do what our ancestors did. We must bind him again." The Pharaoh's voice boomed inside their minds, louder than thunder. He cursed them. He promised to destroy them. But the explorers no longer trembled. They stood as one, their fear burned away by the truth revealed. Amir lifted his torch high. "This is the dark truth of the Pharaoh. He was no god. He was a slave to shadows. And humanity defeated him once before. We will do it again." The chamber trembled as the Pharaoh's power surged, but the explorers pressed forward. The truth had been uncovered, and with it came strength. They were no longer seekers of treasure. They were guardians of the seal, defenders of the courage, left behind by those who came before. The Pharaoh's dark truth had been revealed, and now they would fight to keep it buried forever. The chamber shook as if the earth itself wanted to drive them out. The Pharaoh's presence filled every corner. pressing against the explorers' minds like a heavy storm. Shadows crawled across the floor, reaching for their feet. The air grew colder, and the flickering torches seemed fragile against the waves of darkness. Amir tightened his grip on his torch and stood firm. "Hold together," he called, his voice strong against the roar in their heads. "Do not listen to him. He feeds on fear. We must stand as one." The whispers grew sharper, more desperate. They promised gold beyond measure, power over nations, and even life without end. Each promise slid into their thoughts like a blade. Rashid fell to his knees, clutching his ears. "It is too much." His voice is everywhere. Lena knelt beside him, forcing his hands away from his head. "Look at me, Rashid. Do not let him inside. Remember the carvings the people resisted. We can too." Her voice shook, but her determination gave Rashid strength. Slowly, he lifted his eyes and nodded. "Pharaoh," his face pale, picked up a fallen length of chain. It glimmered faintly, still carrying some of its strange power. "Our ancestors bound him with this. If we are to win, we must do the same." Nabi examined the symbols carved into the walls. His torchlight revealed patterns that curved and twisted like maps of energy. "These are not just warnings, they are instructions. Look, the people drew how they bound him, how they sealed him with unity and fire." Amir studied the drawings, his heart racing. The images showed men and women pressing the chains into the pharaoh's body, their torches burning bright as they worked together. The message was clear. The chains alone were not enough. It was their unity, their will, that gave the chains strength. He turned to his companions, his eyes fierce. "We do not need gods. We do not need false promises. We are human, and that is enough. Together, we will seal him again." The pharaoh's body jerked inside the sarcophagus, his chest rising violently. The wrappings tore slightly, revealing skin that gleamed faintly. Not like flesh, but like stone infused with fire. His eyes opened for a moment, burning gold, and a wave of pressure hurled dust and broken treasure across the chamber. The explorers staggered but did not fall. Their torches flared brighter, fighting against the wave of shadow. Lena shouted over the storm, her voice ringing like steel. "Chains to the platform. Bind him before he rises fully." They moved quickly, each taking part of the heavy chains. The metal was cold, almost painful to touch, but they pulled together. The first chain clattered across the sarcophagus, glowing faintly as it touched the wrappings. The pharaoh's roar filled their minds, a sound of rage that shook their bones. "You cannot bind me again," the voice thundered. "I am eternal. I am beyond death. You are dust before my power." Amir pushed forward, pressing the second chain down with all his weight. "You were defeated once before, and you will be defeated again. Not because we are gods, but because we are human. We are free." Farid and Nabi hauled another length across the coffin, locking it into place. The glowing symbols on the chains pulsed with new life, as though the unity of their effort awakened the power within. The shadows recoiled, hissing like snakes driven back by flame. But the pharaoh did not weaken quietly. The whispers turned to screams, each explorer feeling claws of doubt dig into their thoughts. He showed them visions of wealth, kingdoms at their feet, their names sung for eternity. Lena's hands trembled as her mind filled with the image of herself on a golden throne. For a moment, she almost let go. Amir saw her falter and called out, "Lena, remember the people. They did not rise for power. They rose for freedom. That is our throne." His words struck her like light through fog. She gritted her teeth and pulled the chain tighter. "Yes, for freedom." The pharaoh's chest heaved again, but the chains glowed brighter, pressing him down. The more they resisted his temptations, the weaker his power became. The chamber walls lit with faint golden lines, the ancient carvings themselves glowing. As if cheering their effort, Nabi shouted, his voice full of fire, "He cannot defeat all of us. Stand strong." Together they dragged the final chain across the sarcophagus. The pharaoh's roar shook the chamber, a sound of fury and fear. Shadows whipped violently, slamming against the explorers, but they held firm. Their torches blazed brighter than before, their flames unyielding. Rashid, once the most afraid, shouted with all his strength, You will not break us. We are not yours to command." With one final effort, they locked the last chain in place. The glowing symbols pulsed, spreading across the sarcophagus and into the platform below. The chamber shook violently, but this time it was not from the Pharaoh's power. It was from the seal taking hold again. The shadows screamed as they were dragged back into the sarcophagus. The golden eyes dimmed, and the Pharaoh's chest stilled. The whispers faded into silence. The explorers collapsed against the cold stone floor, breathing heavily. Their torches burned steadily now, their light calm and strong. The chamber was silent once more. But this silence felt different. It was not the silence of waiting. It was the silence of victory. Amir raised his head, his face covered in sweat and dust, but his eyes bright. "It is done. The Pharaoh is sealed again. Not by gods, not by shadows, but by us." Lena looked at him, her torchlight reflecting in her tired eyes. "We faced what they faced, and like them, we stood as one." The others nodded weakly. They were exhausted, but within each of them burned the same truth. Humanity did not bow. Humanity resisted, and humanity triumphed. The Pharaoh had risen in whispers, but the human stand had silenced him. Once more, the chamber grew still after the struggle, but the silence was heavy. Dust floated in the air, falling slowly like snow upon the explorers' weary faces. Their torches flickered softly, no longer fighting against shadows, only giving gentle light in the darkness. Amir rose first, though his legs shook. He placed his hand on the glowing chains wrapped across the sarcophagus. The metal was warm now, pulsing faintly with light. The Pharaoh's presence was trapped again, but Amir could feel it straining deep beneath the seal, like a beast waiting for the smallest crack. "This place cannot stay open," he said quietly. His voice was steady, though tired. "If the tomb remains, others may come, and if they disturb it, the Pharaoh may rise once more." Lena nodded, brushing dust from her face. "We must finish what our ancestors began. We must close it forever." The others gathered their strength. Rashid leaned on his torch for support, his body weak, but his spirit burning stronger than before. Fard examined the walls, tracing the glowing symbols with his fingers. "These carvings are more than warnings," he said. "They are a key. If we follow them, we can seal the chamber permanently." Nabi joined him. Studying the ancient designs, the carvings showed not only how to bind the Pharaoh, but also how the people had once buried the entrance beneath stone and sand. It was a message across centuries, a call for anyone who discovered the tomb to do the same. Amir's eyes moved across his companions. Each of them had faced fear, temptation, and pain. Yet none had broken. They had stood as one, and that unity had defeated the Pharaoh. Now, they would use that same strength to finish the task. "Gather what we can," Amir ordered. "Torches, tools, anything useful. We will seal this tomb, and no hand will break it again." They worked together, moving stones from the broken passage, placing them back into place with care. Each stone they set felt like another promise, another stand against the Pharaoh's return. Sweat dripped from their faces, and their hands grew raw, but they did not stop. Lena kept her eyes on the glowing chains as she worked. The faint light pulsed slower now, as if the Pharaoh's strength was fading further into the dark. Still, she knew it was not gone completely. "We are not just closing a tomb," she said aloud, as if to remind them all. "We are guarding the future. He must never touch the world again." Hours passed as they labored. The air grew thick with dust as the entrance slowly disappeared behind stone. Rashid, once fearful, worked with new courage. He lifted heavy rocks. Without hesitation, his breath rough but determined. "He almost took my mind," Rashid said quietly as he placed another stone. "I will not let him take anyone else's." Fard and Nabi carved simple marks into the stones, copying the symbols they had studied. The glowing from the chains seemed to spread faintly into the marks, as if approving their effort. Each mark was a piece of the seal, strengthening it with human will and memory. Finally, when the last stone was pushed into place, Amir stepped back. The passage was gone, replaced by a wall of rock and carved symbols. The tomb was once again hidden beneath the earth. The explorers stood together, torches casting soft light on their tired but resolute faces. None spoke for a long time. They only listened to the silence, the true silence of a place put to rest. At last, Nabi broke the stillness. Do you think he will ever rise again? Amir looked at the sealed wall. His eyes were heavy with exhaustion, but also filled with unshakable belief. As long as humans stand together, he will never rise. Darkness may whisper, but unity will silence it. Lena smiled faintly, though her face was streaked with dirt and sweat. Then we must carry this story. Others must know why this place must never be touched. If knowledge is lost, curiosity will return, and curiosity may bring danger. Farid nodded. Yes, let the story be told, not as a tale of gold, but as a warning and a truth that humans once faced what seemed eternal and triumphed. With that, they turned away from the tomb. Their torches lit the path back through the ruins, guiding them to the world above. When they emerged under the desert sky, dawn was breaking. The horizon glowed with the first light of day, soft and golden. The desert wind brushed against their faces, carrying away the dust of the tomb. The air felt fresh, alive, and full of promise. Rashid closed his eyes, breathing deeply. It feels different now, he said, as if the desert itself is lighter. Amir looked at the rising sun. Perhaps it is. The Pharaoh's shadow has been pushed back again, and the world is free to breathe. They walked away from the ruins, leaving behind the hidden tomb, now sealed beneath stone and sand. Though their bodies were weary, their spirits were strong. They had faced a power that claimed to be eternal, and they had proven that humanity's strength lay not in fear or greed, but in unity, courage, and freedom. The desert stretched endlessly before them, wide and silent. Yet in that silence, each of them felt the weight of what they had done. They were not only explorers, they were guardians, carrying a truth that would echo across generations. The Pharaoh's dark truth was buried once more, and humanity, standing together, had written a new truth in history, the truth that no shadow, no matter how ancient or powerful, could overcome the will of free people. As the sun rose higher, their torches dimmed and were finally extinguished. They no longer needed them. The light of day was enough. And with steady steps, the explorers walked on, leaving behind a sealed tomb and carrying forward the unbroken flame of humanity's stand.